The race for president and the power of the presidency colliding in one Supreme Court decision. The court ruled today that a president has at least some immunity from prosecution. The landmark ruling involves the federal election interference case against former President Donald Trump, brought by Special Prosecutor Jack Smith. On one hand, the court ruling that Mr. Trump cannot be prosecuted for official acts, but also saying he is not immune from prosecution for acts outside his scope as president.
Okay, so Trump just rushed out of a courtroom in what observers are calling one of the most humiliating moments in modern presidential history, because a judge, Judge Juan Merchan in New York, just issued a historic ruling that strips Trump of his claimed presidential immunity. That's right. The immunity defense Trump has been relying on across multiple cases just got destroyed. The judge ruled that Trump must face legal consequences for acts committed as a private citizen, that he cannot shield himself from indictment or sentencing for personal crimes, that his conviction stands and he's going to face sentencing like any other criminal defendant. And Trump's reaction? He stormed out, rushed out of the courtroom in visible agitation, couldn't sit there and listen to the judge explain why his immunity claims were nonsense, why he's going to face consequences, why his core defensive strategy just collapsed. This is a turning point. This is the moment Trump's legal firewall gets shattered. This is when Trump has to accept that he's going to be treated like any other defendant who committed crimes. But before we go any further, real quick, let's be honest. You can't really trust mainstream media anymore. That's why we built Pump Politics, to bring you real stories, real context, and no corporate spin. If you want to stay ahead of the headlines, join our free newsletter. We'll send the news straight to your inbox every day. Just click the link in the description to join, and if you just want to support what we're doing, join us. Be part of the community that actually cares about the truth. All right, let's get back to the video. The specific ruling from Judge Merchan is comprehensive. It addresses Trump's conviction in the New York hush money case, and it makes clear that conviction stands that Trump is not immune from prosecution for unofficial personal conduct, that paying hush money to a porn star to influence an election is not an official presidential act. It's a personal crime, a campaign finance violation. And Trump doesn't get immunity for it just because he was running for president or later became president. The judge's language following new Supreme Court guidance is important because the Supreme Court recently ruled on presidential immunity, said that presidents have some immunity for official acts taken while in office. But the court also made clear that immunity doesn't extend to unofficial acts, doesn't extend to personal conduct, doesn't extend to campaign activities. And paying hush money is definitely not an official presidential act. It's personal, it's related to the campaign, and there's no immunity for it. Legal analysts calling this a turning point captures the significance. Trump's entire legal strategy has been built on claiming immunity, arguing that as a former president,
President Donald Trump cannot use presidential immunity as a defense in the civil lawsuit against him because he didn't raise it further in proceedings. That is the latest decision from a federal judge. Former magazine columnist E. Jean Carroll sued him for allegedly defaming her when, while as president, he denied her allegations of sexual assault. In May, President Trump was found liable for battery and defamation in another suit, and Carroll was awarded $5 million.
He can't be prosecuted for things he did while in office or while running for office, but judges are systematically rejecting that claim, are saying immunity is limited, applies only to true official acts. And most of what Trump is charged with, hush money payments, election interference, classified documents retention, none of that is official presidential conduct. All of it is prosecutable. The statement that Trump must now face every trial, hearing, and possible sentence as a private citizen is the reality Trump has been trying to avoid. He's been using his status as former president to claim special treatment, to argue for dismissals, to delay proceedings. But that's over. Courts are saying he's a private citizen now, faces the same legal system as everyone else, has to show up for trials, has to comply with court orders, has to face sentencing if convicted, no special protection. The removal of immunity triggering audible shock in court shows how unexpected this was for Trump's team. They apparently believed they had a shot at getting the conviction overturned on immunity grounds, had built arguments around the Supreme Court's recent immunity decision, thought they could use that to escape consequences. But the judge saw through those arguments, applied the Supreme Court's ruling correctly, and concluded that Trump's conduct wasn't covered by any immunity. That shock in the courtroom, gasps, visible reactions from Trump's lawyers, shows they weren't prepared for this. Trump's lawyers protesting the ruling is standard defensive behavior. They're going to appeal, going to argue the judge got it wrong, going to try every avenue to avoid Trump facing sentencing. But the ruling is clear, the legal reasoning is solid, and higher courts are likely to uphold it because the judge correctly applied the law. Correctly distinguished between official acts that might have immunity and personal crimes that don't. Trump reportedly exiting in a state of visible agitation shows his emotional response. Trump doesn't handle losing well, doesn't like being told he's wrong, doesn't accept that he has to follow the same rules as everyone else. So when a judge tells him his immunity claims are rejected, that he's going to face sentencing, Trump can't sit there calmly. He storms out, leaves in agitation. That visible emotional response is humiliating for someone whose brand is strength and control. The judge's explicit call out of attempts to delay or manipulate the legal process shows the court saw through Trump's tactics. Trump has been trying every possible maneuver to avoid accountability, filing motion after motion, making argument after argument, all designed to delay, to create confusion, to find some loophole. And the judge is saying, I see what you're doing. It's not going to work. You're going to face justice. The declaration that Trump's efforts to retroactively pardon himself or seek blanket legal protection are unconstitutional is particularly important because Trump has apparently been arguing that he should be able to pardon himself, or that being president again would give him immunity from state prosecutions. And the judge is saying, no, those arguments are unconstitutional. They're invalid. They're contrary to the fundamental principle that no one is above the law. That principle, no one is above the law, is what this entire ruling is about. Trump thinks his status should protect him. The courts are saying it doesn't. All right, so let's dig into what the Supreme Court's immunity ruling actually says, why Trump's conduct doesn't qualify for immunity, and what comes next now that his immunity claims are rejected. The Supreme Court's recent decision on presidential immunity established some important principles. Presidents do have immunity for official acts taken while in office, that immunity is necessary to allow presidents to perform their duties without fear of constant litigation. But the immunity is limited. It only applies to official acts, things the president does as part of their constitutional duties. It doesn't apply to unofficial acts, personal conduct, campaign activities, private business dealings. All of that is outside the scope of immunity. The court also made clear that determining what's an official act requires looking at the nature of the conduct. Is it something within the president's constitutional authority? Is it part of executing the laws or conducting foreign policy or commanding the military? If so, it might be an official act. But if it's personal, if it's about the president's private interests, if it's about their campaign or their business, then it's not an official act, and there's no immunity. Judge Merchan's application of these principles to the hush money case is straightforward. The hush money payments were made to silence Stormy Daniels about an alleged affair. The purpose was to prevent damaging information from coming out before the election. That's a personal motive. That's campaign-related conduct. It has nothing to do with official presidential duties. Trump wasn't acting as president when he directed those payments. He was acting as a candidate trying to influence an election. And candidates don't get immunity for campaign crimes. The falsification of business records to hide the payments is also clearly not an official act. Trump and his organization created false records to disguise the hush money payments as legal expenses. That's fraud. That's criminal conduct. And it has nothing to do with being president. It's personal criminal activity designed to hide embarrassing information and influence an election. No immunity applies. The judge's conclusion that Trump's conviction stands is based on this analysis. The jury found Trump guilty of falsifying business records. That conviction was based on personal criminal conduct, not official acts. So immunity doesn't apply. The conviction is valid, and Trump has to face sentencing. Trump's arguments for immunity apparently tried to stretch the concept of official acts, maybe claimed that everything a president does is somehow official, or that acts taken while president are automatically covered. But the judge rejected those broad claims, applied the Supreme Court's narrow definition of immunity, and concluded Trump's conduct simply doesn't qualify. The implications for Trump's other cases are significant, because if hush money payments aren't covered by immunity, then neither are most of the other things Trump is charged with: election interference in Georgia, classified documents retention at Mar-a-Lago, January 6th related conduct. None of that is official presidential conduct in the sense the Supreme Court meant all of it is personal or political conduct, all prosecutable without immunity concerns. The collapse of Trump's immunity defense across multiple cases creates a cascade. Each ruling that immunity doesn't apply makes the next one easier, creates precedent, establishes that Trump's conduct isn't covered. Soon, every court will have rejected Trump's immunity claims, and Trump will be out of defenses. The threat to Trump's liberty is now very real. Without immunity, there's nothing preventing sentencing in the New York case, nothing preventing trials in the other cases, nothing preventing conviction and imprisonment if the evidence supports it. Trump is facing the possibility of actual jail time, of being a convicted felon serving a sentence. That's a reality he's been trying to avoid. But the immunity ruling makes it unavoidable. The threat to close aides and co-defendants is also significant because if Trump doesn't have immunity, neither do the people who helped him commit crimes, the lawyers who facilitated the hush money payments, the officials who helped with election interference, the staff who helped hide classified documents, all of them facing prosecution without immunity protection, all potentially facing conviction and sentencing. The more rulings and possible detentions expected means this isn't over. This ruling opens the floodgates. More judges will rule on immunity in other cases. More defendants will be told they're not protected. More sentencings and trials will proceed, all creating comprehensive legal accountability for Trump and his associates. The attempts at retroactive self-pardons that the judge rejected apparently involved Trump arguing he could pardon himself for state crimes, or that federal pardons he might grant himself would cover state prosecutions. But the judge said no, presidents can't pardon themselves, and federal pardons don't apply to state crimes. So Trump's potential self-pardon schemes are legally invalid. The judge's statement that such efforts are contrary to the fundamental principle that no one is above the law is the core constitutional principle at stake. American democracy is built on equal application of law, on the idea that everyone, regardless of power or position, has to follow the same rules. Trump's immunity claims and self-pardon arguments violate that principle, suggest he should be treated differently because of his status. The courts are emphatically rejecting that, saying Trump faces the same legal system as everyone else. Okay, so let's break down what this immunity ruling means for Trump's immediate future and for the principle of presidential accountability. Point one, Judge Merchan's ruling that Trump has no immunity for hush money conviction eliminates Trump's primary legal defense and paves way for sentencing. Without immunity, there's no legal basis to overturn the conviction. Trump is a convicted felon, and he's going to be sentenced. That could mean fines, probation, or even jail time. The judge will decide based on sentencing guidelines and Trump's conduct. Point two, the application of Supreme Court's narrow immunity standard to Trump's conduct establishes that most of what Trump is charged with across all cases isn't covered by immunity campaign crimes, personal fraud, document retention, election interference. None of it qualifies as official presidential acts, all of it prosecutable without immunity concerns. That makes Trump's legal position across all cases much weaker. Point three, Trump rushing out of courtroom in visible agitation shows his emotional inability to accept that he faces accountability. Like any other defendant, Trump's entire identity is built on being above rules, being special, getting away with things others can't. This ruling directly contradicts that identity, forces Trump to confront that he's going to face consequences, and he can't handle that psychologically. Point four, the rejection of self-pardon schemes as unconstitutional closes off Trump's backup plans for avoiding consequences. Trump apparently thought if he became president again, he could pardon himself or somehow use executive power to escape state prosecutions. But courts are saying that's not how it works. Presidential powers don't extend to self-pardons or to interfering with state prosecutions. Trump can't escape accountability through political power. Point five. This ruling establishes precedent that even former presidents must face direct personal legal risk for private crimes without executive privilege as escape. That's crucial for future accountability. Future presidents will know they can't commit crimes and claim immunity, can't use their office to shield personal criminality, have to follow the law like everyone else. So what's the bottom line? Trump rushed out of courtroom after judge stripped his immunity. Judge Merchan ruled Trump's conviction stands that former presidents aren't immune from prosecution for unofficial personal conduct, that hush money payments and campaign finance violations aren't covered by any immunity. Trump's visible agitation showing he can't accept this, can't handle being told he faces consequences. Legal analysts calling this a turning point. Trump must now face trials and sentencing as private citizen, no longer shielded by presidency or claims of special status. The Supreme Court guidance being applied correctly. Only official presidential acts get limited immunity. Personal crimes, campaign violations, private conduct, none of that covered Trump's hush money payments, clearly personal, clearly campaign-related. No immunity applies. The judge explicitly rejecting attempts to delay or manipulate process, seeing through Trump's tactics, saying no more delays, no more immunity claims. Time to face sentencing. Trump's efforts at retroactive self-pardons, declared unconstitutional and invalid. Can't pardon yourself. Can't use presidential powers to escape state prosecutions. Fundamental principle that no one above the law must be enforced. Live coverage describing Trump's hasty exit as one of the most humiliating moments in modern presidential history. Former president storming out of court because he can't handle ruling against him. That visible humiliation broadcast to world. The ruling paving way for sentencing, fines, possibly jail. Trump facing real consequences for his crimes without immunity to protect him. The collapse of immunity shield threatening Trump's liberty and that of his co-defendants. Everyone who helped him commit crimes now facing prosecution without immunity protection. More rulings and detentions expected as other judges apply same reasoning. If Trump doesn't have immunity in New York, he doesn't have it in Georgia or in federal cases. Every court will reach same conclusion. Trump's conduct not covered. The shattering of legal firewall Trump hoped would protect him. Immunity was supposed to be his ultimate defense, his way to avoid all accountability. But court systematically rejecting it, saying it doesn't apply to his conduct. This marking new era where former presidents face direct personal legal risk, can't use executive privilege to escape consequences, can't claim immunity for personal crimes, have to follow same laws as everyone else. Trump's dramatic exit showing his refusal to accept this reality, his agitation reflecting his psychological inability to process being held accountable. The fundamental principle being enforced, no one is above the law, not presidents, not former presidents, not powerful politicians. Everyone subject to same legal system, everyone accountable for their crimes. This is what equal justice looks like. Former president stripped of immunity claims, forced to face sentencing for his conviction, unable to escape through status or power. The courts working exactly as designed, checking executive power, ensuring accountability, enforcing constitutional principles. Trump rushing out in humiliation rather than accepting this with dignity. That emotional reaction showing who Trump really is. Someone who can't accept rules apply to him. Someone who thinks he deserves special treatment, someone who storms out rather than face consequences like an adult. But the consequences are coming anyway. The immunity ruling ensures that Trump will be sentenced, will face penalties for his crimes, will potentially go to jail despite being former president. That accountability is historic, is unprecedented, and is absolutely necessary for American democracy. Because if former presidents could commit crimes and claim immunity, the whole system would break down, presidents would be above the law, could act with impunity. Democracy couldn't survive that. So this ruling is about more than Trump. It's about the principle, about ensuring that presidential power has limits, that everyone faces justice, that immunity doesn't mean impunity. Trump storming out of courtroom as his immunity gets stripped. That's the image that defines this moment. Powerful man, unable to accept that rules apply to him, running away rather than facing accountability, but accountability catching up anyway, courts stripping immunity, clearing path to sentencing, to ensuring Trump faces consequences. That's rule of law working, that's democracy surviving, that's what it looks like when no one is above the law.